Hey, babe, what's up? We're back.
We are back. We are back with this, what is it, our second episode of our podcast that we're doing here. Super exciting. I hope everybody's enjoying the content. For those of you that don't know us, we are Jason and Jen Catalanato. We're the team leaders of the Lifestyle Home Team. We're real estate investors and entrepreneurs, and we are just passionate about helping people build generational wealth through real estate investing.
Absolutely.
So today we're going to kind of talk about our journey into real estate, and I think really how we got started with the team and the lessons that we learned with having a team.
Right.
So about 10 years ago, I got into real estate as a single agent. And actually, I wouldn't even say a single agent. I got in as a single agent, but then I quickly knew that I realized I knew nothing about real estate, right? Like I've owned businesses, so I had that knowledge. And so I was really good at like getting out right away and starting to get clients. But I realized I knew nothing about the process, the transaction. And at the time, we had just moved here. I had no sphere of influence. I lived here 3 months at the time. So I knew nobody. The only person I knew was our real estate agent. So thank God for her. She was such a blessing in our lives. So I had reached out to her, and she was a very successful agent, and she was kind of coming towards the tail end of her career. And so I'm trying to get started, and there's this woman telling me how much she can't stand all the leads that she has and that she's working too much. And she just wants to be at her beach house. And so I asked her to partner. I still will stay to this day. I asked her to partner with me. She claims I told her that we were partnering. But I didn't even realize that we kind of formed a team because we really didn't even go into it with those expectations. But we did. We basically formed our little team together, and we worked together really, really well for a year. She taught me so much. I don't think I would have even be close to where I am today without her. So Agreed. Lana, if you are watching, I love you, and I can still not thank you enough for everything you did for me and my family. So, but I will say, with that being said, she decided to retire.
Well, let's fill them in on a little bit. What was interesting from the outside looking in was she wanted to slow down and let you start taking more of the lead. And what we realized was you guys were both drivers. So the more you did, the more she did. The more she did, the more you did.
Well, because neither one of us wanted to let the other one down. So I felt like if she was selling houses, I'm like, well, I didn't sell 2 houses this weekend, so I need to go sell 2 houses.
And it just became this competition.
We both are competitive.
This friendly, really cool competition where she was supposed to ride off into the sunset and scale back, and then she ramped up even more because she wanted to keep up with you and you wanted to keep up with her. Right. And we
sold
cool
a ton of homes that year. I'll never forget, because the first day, so at first she was very hesitant, and I said, the very first weekend, I knew she was going to her beach house. I said, give me this weekend. Let me show you what I can do this weekend. Turn over your phones to me. No idea she had so many leads coming in, because this was back before Zillow was crazy expensive to buy leads. Right. So she had bought the whole market. I sold 6 houses my first weekend with her.
Now, guys, to keep that into perspective, the average agent in the U.S. sells less than 5 houses in a year, and she knocked out 6 in a weekend.
But it was funny because I saw my one client in the morning, and then I had a bunch of other clients, and then she called me later and she wanted to put in an offer. And so it was on a new build. So I met her back at the builder, and she saw me from the very fresh face at the beginning of the day. And I walked in and she goes, whoa, what happened to you? I was like, I'm so sorry. I'm still here though. But it was really a huge blessing. But with that being said, like, we kind of went into real estate, at least I did. I think like most people is, this sounds like something that'd be kind of fun to do. Not fun, but just like interesting. It's something I had interest in. We had little kids at the time, so I didn't want to take a job where I was really committed to the office. So I wanted the flexibility, but I didn't go into it with a plan. My plan was, oh crap, I don't know what I'm doing. Right. Let me ask Lana for help. Then that was great. And we made a ton of money that year, but we had no systems in place. We ended up putting a CRM in place halfway through it. But I mean, it was they were nice. I was crying myself to sleep because I was so overwhelmed. And so then Lana did end up retiring. You decided to get licensed and came in. And again, we're both high drivers. So what did we do? We both got ourselves into that crazy spot again where we were, killing ourselves. And we never really thought about having a team, never really looked at what that really looked like
Right.
until we were going on vacation.
On a cruise. So we didn't have internet connection. We weren't going to have access to our phones.
Right. And I'll never forget, we're like, well, what are we going to do? Like, there's nobody answer the phones. And there was this young kid in the office, and he was in the office every day working. Like, I know
He was hustling.
Struggling to get going, though. And
Yep.
so you said, you're like, how about we ask Nick if he wants to do it? And I'll never forget, our broker at the time came to us and she's like, what are you guys doing? You're just going to turn over the phones to this agent that doesn't know what he's brand new. Like, what are you thinking? And we're like, well, it's better than nobody answering the phones.
Yeah, I thought it was a great idea.
It was a great idea, though, because he ended up, so that's how we came back from vacation, and he said he loved it.
Yep.
He sold some houses
He did well.
He did really well. And he's like, whatever this is, I want to keep doing it. And so that's really how we got into a team.
Right. On accident. Unintentionally.
Right. And so thank God again for Nick, because Nick was such a hard worker and he was so loyal to us, and he stuck with us through, I think, a lot of mistakes.
Yep.
Because we didn't have a plan.
We didn't know. Yeah, we didn't know what we were doing. We were fairly new in the business. We hadn't really been on a team or followed teams or really have any idea how to create a team. It came out of a necessity and kind of an accident.
Yeah. So, but I think that's it. That's how most agents end up in the team situation, right? They don't really think about what it means to be a team leader. And now, 10 years later, 9 years later from when that date was, looking back, I'm like, oh my gosh, like there's so many things that we could have done differently that I wish we would have done differently that would have saved us some headaches.
Absolutely.
So I think, I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think, looking back, some of the things to start, if we were to start it over, is the systems and processes, right? Like we were creating systems and processes on the fly versus having them ahead of time already detailed out so that you have an expectation of what the agent is to do, and the agent has an expectation of what they're supposed to do, and then what they're going to get out of that.
I agree. And I think it's just like you were saying, those expectations and having that really clear conversations with people before they join your team. Because I feel like a lot of times I see teams, it ends up being friends that enjoy working together, that end up like kind of merging and saying, let's do this together. And they don't have those really tough conversations ahead of time.
Right.
And I think setting those proper expectations was something that we really failed to do. I mean, we were very lucky with our very first team members. They were with us and they were just hard workers.
Yeah.
But then we're like, honestly, we were lucky. They did so well that we're like, well, this is easy. Like everybody says this team thing's so hard. Like we're just killing it out here.
Kind of like when you have that first kid and that first kid's amazing. And
then you have the
second one and you're like, what happened?
And then we went on to have the third, thinking that second was the anomaly. And then we realized that it was not that way. But so I think it was definitely like, it wasn't until we made a few of those bad hires that were like, maybe we don't really know what we're doing and we need to take a step back. I think, I don't know. If I did it all over again, I would completely do it differently.
Absolutely.
I know the number one thing. I'm also he's like the driver. He's the idea guy. I'm a lot of the ideas too, but I like the road. I do. I want to know we're not going to crash into something. Like he's like, let's fly the plane and build it as we go. I want to know that we're not like nose diving into the runway. so I think that I wish that we would have kind of had those conversations, especially being a husband and wife team, because that's the other dynamic that changes. Is it's one thing if there's one team leader. But then when you have a husband and wife team and we don't really have those clear standards in place, what happens is just kind of like with your kids, right? They come back and they don't like the answer that dad gives them. They call mom hoping they get a different answer and vice versa. And so I think if we would have really sat down and said, this is our vision, our 5-10 year goal, we could have saved ourselves a lot of headaches.
Right. I wish we would have read Rocket Fuel prior to starting a team, because where that gave me clarity was for me to let go of the control. I always want to control everything, right?
You still do. It's okay. It's okay. We just you weren't at the office yesterday when we all had that conversation about you.
Well, at least now I realize I don't want to control the things that I'm not good at, and she's better at those things. So let her do that. I'll stay in my lane. She stays in her lane. I wish that I would have had that knowledge at the beginning. Thankfully, we've worked together since we were 19 years old. So we've been able to weather all of those storms, right?
Right.
Where I've seen that dynamic of husband and wife working together, and it can also pull you apart. Right. Thankfully, I would say it's brought us closer together over these 20 plus years.
Right. And I think that, it definitely, especially being a husband and wife team, I think having that clarity, because I see so much in teams and I'm always trying to be mindful of it. And I'm sure you are too, is like not letting it always turn into, you have to keep that business hat on when you're in the office. Like there's times that like, I'm ready to say a lot, but I have to wait till I get home because, you just don't want, it's just like kids, right? You don't want them to see like parents, like, not agreeing on something, not even fighting, just disagreeing on how to handle something, because they're always going to pick whatever answer they want, not what is really best for the business. So I think that we've been very fortunate that it hasn't like totally blown up in our face with not having a plan.
Right.
But we also we've been resilient. And there's times that we're like, crap, we screwed up. We did some things wrong. The other thing, like you were saying, rocket fuel, I think part of that, what you were saying with that control thing, I think part of that's just maturity. That book was amazing. But I think part of through lessons and almost burning yourself out a few times has helped you realize, and having some health issues and things that you're just like, I don't want to feel like this, I can't operate at this level. So that helped you, I think, take that step back. I would say and we're always learning, right? Like I went through success coaching certification just last week. And even in that, I was like, I had so many ahas on things that I was like, man, I did not hire correctly. We look at these, everybody says, look at the disc profile, do a test, and realizing that what I thought I knew in a disc profile and what it really is and who you should be hiring, we were hiring so many of the wrong people because I wasn't armed with the questions to ask. And so I just think that we're always evolving, and there's so many things I even want to put into place now with our team going forward so that we don't make even more mistakes. Right. So I don't know. I just think that was a very interesting certification. That was a great.
Yeah. I even took things out of it just from what you learned. It was cool. And now we're using it on our kids, right? I mean,
oh, it's hard. So I realized in that success coaching certification that I really didn't have a coach. I've hired a lot of mentors. Yeah. And because a lot of times, especially in the real estate world, somebody gets knowledge on a certain topic and they become a coach. Right. And what they do is they give you advice on how they built their business. Right. And that's kind of how we were running as team leaders. Like we knew what worked for us and we were building. And so people would come to us and we're like, well, we can show you what we did. And the biggest fault in that is they're not me. They're not you. We can't make people want to be minions of ourselves. Like we have to really coach them and get to their motives and their heart, because if you don't know where their heart is and their motivation, you'll never lead them in the right direction. And
that's super important, because in real estate, there's so many ways to do real estate, right? Like there's so many different ways that you can be a great real estate agent, that you can make money in real estate, but you have to tailor it to that person's personality on what works, right? I always give the example of door knocking. Door knocking didn't work for me. I got the cops called because people thought I was like,
he was stealing Amazon
packages or something. And I'm like, I don't even have any packages. Why are you calling the police on me?
I'm in a Tesla. I'm not stealing packages. That was great.
But we know people where door knocking is a strength of their business.
Right. But you and Nick also are two Italian guys that put on business suits and decided to door. Like people thought the mafia showed up at their house. They were terrified.
Right. But again, I had to learn that the hard way. I thought I could do it.
Yeah, but no, I think that that really was a big aha for me, was really helping them and learning to ask the questions, because we had to role play coaching, and we actually had to like live coach other people in the class. And there was a lady that was in the class and she was talking about how she loves working her sphere, but she's struggling getting more listings. And of course, my natural reaction was I'm like, oh, I know what I did in this situation. And I wanted to tell her, like, you should host an event, you should do this, you should do that. And you can't do that. And so I had to ask her questions. And when I really got to the questions and I got to know who she was, that was the worst advice I could have ever given her. That woman is so terrified of being out in front of a bunch of people and doing a big event. Like she had to figure out what she wanted to do and how she wanted to reach out to people in a way that it was authentic to her. Correct. And so, I definitely made me realize that most people who are going to join a team, they are not like me. They're not like you. drivers are a very small percentage compared to other, personality types. And the people who are joining teams, they usually want training, they want structure, they want all the things so that they don't have this fear of what we're doing.
That's why they're coming to a team, right? They want that reassurance on what they don't feel confident in, and how do we help them build that confidence and bridge that gap.
And so we have to stop. We had to stop learning. I had to learn to stop coaching them to try to be like me, because they're not going to be.
Right.
So
nobody's you, baby.
No, nobody's as good as me, babe.
Well,
I think. Well, no, I wasn't done with that.
All right,
so, but with the teams, one of the things that I was going to point out, though, if you are a new agent who's just getting licensed, or if you are somebody who is thinking about joining a team, I think that there are some things that you really should look into, because just like any other industry, teams are changing so much, right? I think our industry, I think that we're going to see a lot more teams coming into the market.
Yep. We've been seeing it over the past few years. That transition is happening.
But I gave the analogy earlier when we were talking about this with my grandfather. He opened restaurants back in the 70s, right? And even earlier than that. And, back then restaurants were just a little building with just tables and chairs, and you went in to get food. Now you go to these restaurants and they're multi-million-dollar build outs with all, you have the mom and pops, and then you have these big, shiny franchise models.
Experience.
And I think that that's what, there are teams like that, right? And you have to really know what you're getting yourself into, because there's so many different types of team models. So many teams are structured differently. So I think it's really important for you to think about your heart, what you say your vision for your business, and finding a team that aligns with that. Because not saying that any of them are right or wrong.
There's a bunch of right ways to do it.
It's just finding which one is the right fit for you.
Agreed.
So, cool.
So ask the questions, right? If you're a new agent out there and you're trying to figure out which team to go to, ask the questions of, what are they pouring into you? What trainings are they utilizing? Do they have systems, processes in place? What are their expectations from you? I think that's a big one that a lot of people forget to ask. And remember, when you got into this business, it's not like a normal 9-to-5 job. This is you owning a business. Whether you're on a team or you're a single agent, you have to take ownership of, this is your business and you're the owner. So you're going to get out of it what you put into it.
Right. And you said what their expectations are of you, but what are your expectations of your team?
Right.
There are some teams that require a lot of training. They expect you to be in the office a lot because that's just their structure. There's some people who really value that. We're kind of opposite. I mean, we do offer trainings and things, but we're not that be here every day, because we're doing so many things that we're not there every day. So our team operates differently. So I think it's just really looking at what that is, and kind of I don't know. And if you have questions about what questions to ask, I'm loaded with them. They gave me all of them in my training. But I think, I just think looking back now, I wish I was more informed with the right questions to ask people.
Right.
So,
but we've learned along the way.
We've done it. We haven't fallen on our face yet. So we keep pushing forward.
That's right.
So, well, guys, I hope that you enjoyed this podcast. If this is I hope you like it. If you like this content, please subscribe. And if you have any questions about any of this, or if you are licensed and are thinking about joining a team, or would like more information on joining a team, don't hesitate to reach out. Even if it's not our team, I can at least help point you in the right direction.
Yeah, we know a lot of great teams.
We do. So thanks.
Awesome. See you next week.
Yep.